Continuous improvement comes in lots of different flavors and styles. I'm Bella Engelbach, and I'm inviting you to journey with me to the edges of lean. Episode 88, Continuous Improvement and Intelligent Automation with Lauren Hisey. The bots are here, and lean and continuous improvement practitioners see that organizations are eager to take advantage of the capabilities of artificial intelligence, or as my guest Lauren Hisey prefers to call it, intelligent automation. Lauren is here to demystify AI and share with us how continuous improvers can make peace with it and use it effectively in improvement work. And
Lauren Hisey, welcome back to the Edges of Lean.
100 Lunches
Hi,
project.
Thanks for having me again.
Well, what a pleasure to have you back again, and for you to catch us up on what you've learned over the past couple of years about how we can use some of the new tools that are available to us, particularly how that can be used in organizations that are in a lean transformation or lean organizations. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to get caught up with you. So for the folks who don't know you, Lauren, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got into the field that you're in?
Yeah, definitely. I am a continuous improvement consultant. I have my own business, Lauren Hisey Consulting. I also do some fractional work with another firm as well. But I've been doing continuous improvement for, let me say, probably 14 plus years. I got my start out at AT&T, got certified as a master black belt there, and then moved over to Nielsen before going into consulting. But as we all know, if you've been doing continuous improvement in any shape or form, we've always been some type of internal consultant. And then on top of that, I also do a lot of work around automation and technology. So I put continuous improvement and technology together. So I like to think of technology not necessarily as a solution, but as a tool to help the processes to enable the people.
I love that. And it's so interesting. I'm sure you still get some pushback on this from the classical lean folks, because there's always this belief that, well, it's all about the people. But automation is part of lean. I mean, that's really, when you think about it, going all the way back to, Toyota and the original loom that stopped when there was when the thread broke, that was about automation helping the process. So it really is it is part of lean. We can't pretend it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
So Lauren, you came into this as a Six Sigma black belt. What was your technology experience coming into the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, so I actually got my start in a call center. I was in I have the most interesting background probably because I was a poli-sci major, but I needed a job. So I got a friend of mine said, "Hey, come work with us at the IBM call center." And it was all technology, right? So it was back in I'm going to date myself, but back in the day when you had to use a dialer to connect your modem to get connected to the internet, right? It's not like today where everything's connected all the time. So I did a lot of work around when people would call in having problems with the IBM dialer, they used to call it, and to get connected to the internet. So we were doing a lot of that. And then I moved when I graduated. I moved right into becoming a service engineer? No, I'm sorry, systems engineer at IBM, and then AT&T. I did that before I got my start in Lean Six Sigma. In fact, while I was a systems engineer, I went back and got my MBA, and then after my MBA, even before I even really understood what Six Sigma or Lean was, I did a lot of standardizations within our processes within my department, and working with our clients to make sure everybody had like standardized templates to respond back to email requests, right? Just copy and paste, make it easy. And so I had, that's how I got my start in that. And then while I hate to say that I was bored, but I was ready for my next thing, and that's where I got volunteered into AT&T Six Sigma program straight as a black. I went straight in as a black belt in training. I didn't start out. I used to tell people, "Hey, start out with yellow belt and white belt and yellow belt, or you can just get a little taste." But I jumped straight. Just feet first. Let's go.
Straight in the deep end. But
Yeah,
you were
straight in the
already
deep end.
thinking that way. Sounds like you were already thinking that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, I was.
And being a systems engineer, right? That does it's sort of kind of encourage you to be a systems thinker, right? That's
Exactly.
hopefully that goes with it.
Yeah, and you know what? While as a systems engineer, the AT&T internally was introducing a lot of tools to try to make our jobs a little bit easier, try to help the end users do better with their stuff. And right away we found an issue. And so we used to have to because you always needed like an account. Even today, you need an account, account user ID and password, right? And you used to be able to manually enter those in, and they came with the tool that you could try to use it, but there was a problem with the tool that you could only do like one user ID at a time. And I remember having someone who sat next to me who's really good about writing code and automation, develop this automation for me. I would just run in the background. And so, when you talk about automation and technology and people being scared of it, I probably was one of the earlier adopters of it because it just made my job so much easier. So I wasn't spending hours doing mundane tasks. That's usually the biggest sell to clients or to end users is I'm taking away those manual, boring tasks so you can work on more strategic things and you can upscale yourself. And so sometimes it's an easy sell, sometimes it's not. But usually we tell people, hey, what do you do all day long? What if I could take that away from you so you can work on something that's more exciting? That's usually my starting to change management, I guess, and getting them more excited to learn something new.
Yeah, and it's I was just reading yesterday about this kind of push towards a 4-day work week.
Yeah.
And it was I read an article about it. I also saw it in our local evening news, and which was kind of funny. And they were talking about, well, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to stop doing some of those things, which are the things that you were talking about, right? So some of
Right.
those things that seem like they're a waste of time are things that are very mundane. And this is I think it would be it's a dream for some of us, but the idea that we could actually have automation do some of those things so that we can have more time to do things that are more interesting, and that might include working fewer hours or working fewer days as well. As long as everybody's being paid fairly, it sounds like it sounds like a great thing to do.
Exactly.
So Lauren, can we talk about AI? I think everyone's sort of like very interested, excited about artificial intelligence right now. They put this Chat GPT out there where that people can play with. So people are starting to have experience with that. People are using these types of tools in their work. And one of the things that I know that you believe is that artificial intelligence might not be the term that really helps us understand best how to use this. So talk to us about your thought process of what you think we should be saying instead.
Yeah, so when I'm talking to people, and we talk about using AI, so first off, AI, even though we've been using it, we all have Alexas and Googles, whatever, and Siris. That's our artificial intelligence, but how do you apply that into the business world, right? How do we help? And so more often than not, people try to jump straight into into the deep end, and they don't understand that first. You can't just automatically throw technology at something. This is where I think continuous improvement and the technology go together. When I'm talking to people, I usually say, let's not talk about artificial intelligence first. Let's maybe talk about automation, because that usually start with the simple things first and then move into more advanced things. It's almost like that when we do process improvement, right? We always like, let's go take care of the low hanging fruit first.
Right.
So it's the same concept when it comes to this, all this technology. Usually it's like, let's start with RPA, which is robotic process automation. Let's start something with task oriented, make sure that process is standardized. Then let's put some simple technology into it. And then let's learn and see how that works first, right? Let's let it stabilize. And then let's start putting in some intelligent aspects into it. So it's like taking automation and then putting AI together with it where you get that intelligent automation. And then what you do is you start to build into letting it learn, right? You got to make sure it's getting the data that it needs. I like to think of it as a kid. Like when you're in kindergarten, right? You start learning and then you go through all the different grades and then you graduate. And then all of a sudden, when you graduate college, you should have some knowledge of what to do and how to do it. So I think of all of this technology, I think of it like the chat, the chat stuff that's coming out, right? All that, was it Chat GBT?
Chat GPT, yeah.
It's a kid, it's still like a kid, it's still learning. So I know there's a lot of concern about it, right? A lot of concern of, is it going to be discriminative or is it going to provide the right things? What I always tell people is that technology, it's not a solution, it's more of a tool. We're never going to get to the point where there's not going to be some type of human interaction, especially when it comes to something very complex. So when I have a client that we took some of the very simple processes, like we were talking about earlier, the mundane, simple stuff. There is no human interaction in that process because it's so simple, right? But it's learning and the automation and the AI part of it are learning. But when there's if there's anything that's very complex or that has to make a very complex decision, a human has to be involved with that. It can't just be just automatically. It cannot be the technology or the bot doing that. So it's almost like I think as we start to evolve our business processes and our everyday way of working, is that we're going to be working side by side. I want to say, right? We're working side by side with the bots and the humans. And I think of it as so we're like in I think, was it the fourth or fifth industrial revolution is what they usually say. And so if you think about back to the time when you had people, the operators doing the switchboard, right, for the phones.
Mm-hmm. Putting those plugs in and out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's no longer there. It's all automated, right? It's all done pretty fast. So that's but we created a new set of jobs. And that's where I also tell people is, if I could take away the boring stuff and you can learn something new, what would you want to do? And that's where people get excited, because then they get to learn. And that's part of the point when it comes to lean culture or lean transformation, is promoting the ability for them to learn and upskill. And so, and that's where I think a lot of, when we had a lot of the quiet quitting going on, I think it's still happening today, even though things have kind of slowed down a little bit. People are looking at things a little bit differently than they did in the past, right? So they want to learn, they want to do something that's a lot more fun. But then you were talking about the 4-day work week, right? But they also don't want to spend all their time at work like they used to in the past. I think that's if one of the couple good things that came out of the pandemic where people realized that they really like their time at home or spending time with their family and friends. So if I can help them spend a little less time at work so they have more time at home, that's usually a big sell when it comes to learning and then getting home faster.
Wow. So you're talking about the artificial intelligence component of this automation learning, and that is so key for lean, right? Because
yes,
lean it's learning, it's doing experiments so that you can learn something. And one of the things that is always interesting to me is, well, if I've learned something myself, right, and it's something that would be helpful to other people, so generalizable knowledge. In a lot of organizations, there aren't many places to put generalizable knowledge. So if it's like sort of very standard generalizable knowledge, you could put it into an operating procedure, always do it this way.
Right.
Or when you come to this point, this is the decision that you need to make. But if it's sort of, more sort of sophisticated knowledge, but it's still generalizable to other people and other situations. Sometimes like the only way to share that in a lot of organizations is to coach somebody, to mentor somebody. People talk about having company wikis and writing everything down, and my experience with those is well, that stuff gets started, somebody gets excited about it, maybe someone will maintain it, but people don't, as a normal part of their work, keep a wiki up. Right.
Yeah.
It takes a certain personality to do that. So are there ways that these types of tools could help us with our organizational knowledge as we go through our lean learning, as we improve, as we try new things, find out what works? How could those tools help us?
So yeah, if you think about technology and how that can help us, right? So that's where I think a lot of times if you could if you think about a bot or a chat bot, right, that they call them virtual assistants. Yeah. So like I had a company that it was like company name and it was like VA, like they kind of nicknamed it that. And one of the biggest ways that worked with our virtual assistants where for knowledge management, when you think about this, right, when we think about Cindy here, because we talked about her a little bit before we got started. It's building that knowledge base and it giving, so if say for example there's a problem with someone's computer, like their office computer, instead of calling that help desk, why don't they can talk to this bot first, and the bot can become very personalized based on what the person needs to do, right? So instead of having something very standard, the bot starts to learn what the problems are, and it can give back personal recommendations. In fact, the conference I'm going to talk to you next week is about around actually customer experience. But when I think about customer experience, it's not always external; it's also internal. And we talked about how do we use data, and how do we use that to build the knowledge to help create a more personalized experience for the end user. And so that's where I think if we can somehow incorporate those knowledge systems with the bots and the AIs, it can help teach us, and it's something that can be done sometimes in the background, or you can talk to the bot and start to learn through it. Or maybe the bot can even help you write some of that stuff out with human like looking at it.
That'd be sort of like a chat GPT function. You could say,
Yeah.
well, what's already been learned about this problem
Yeah,
in
exactly.
this situation. Oh, here's all the things. But it just made me think of something, Lauren. I was thinking one of the things that is the most frustrating that I find when I call customer service is when the agent that I'm talking to says, please give me a few minutes while I review the history of the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And then
Yeah.
they're gone, and they say a few minutes, and they're gone for like 7.5 minutes. Right. So
Yeah.
and wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if they had a system that could succinctly present to them the history of the problem, so that the customer doesn't have to repeat the whole thing, probably with using the wrong words, the way customers do, and they don't have to go back and read the records from other agents who, and then try to piece together what the story is.
Yeah,
That would be so cool.
That is actually that's already happening with some clients that I'm working with.
Cool.
Yeah, I get excited. It's kind of exciting to see how this stuff has evolved. But yeah, I did work with another client, let me see, probably a couple years ago. And it was for their help desk, or however their agent desk, right? So the problem, the symptom was that they were getting these increasing calls into the help desk that that wasn't predictable. So they couldn't staff right depending on those predictability. So one thing was, one of the first things we did, like, let's get the data together and let's put something very simple, some simple automations that says, hey, if you see this if this, because I process mapped the entire process from end to end, and it wasn't just in the call center, because it figured out it was emails that they were sending out to their customers that were causing the spikes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they couldn't figure out the right way to predict it. So, I'm like, well, it's very easy, because what was happening is that, they were very siloed. So they had different data here, different data there, and these different departments, but they weren't really cross-sharing them. And then after just doing some really simple analysis, when they send the emails out, calls were spiking about 2 weeks later, because people were taking the time. So, anyways, long story short, they started to enable putting into because for that kind of solution does take a little while. They finally implemented it. And basically what it does is first thing is when a customer calls in, they put in their like a phone number or their account number. That takes all the information. So the call agent doesn't necessarily have to get all that and manually put it into a ticket. They were able to, and then ask, oh, what was your problem? Who have you talked to? That was already, so as the person is on hold and is queued up, they will talk to a chatbot will come and start talking to them first to see what's going on. Or the chatbot does that quick little read of history. And then once they get if they still want to talk to an agent, the agent sees right away what's going on and already knows what's going on before they even talk to that person. So
that is so amazing.
Yeah.
Because that's, that wait, right? While you're waiting for someone to read through all of the previous interactions is just one of the things that adds up to sort of the frustration that people have. By the time they're finally talking to the poor agent, they're already a little aggravated. And
and that's like for that whole thing with that client, it came down to, it wasn't, they wanted to deflect the number of calls coming into the call center agent, and then to better staff. But at the same time, they wanted to improve the customer experience. So without, and that's where a lot of that intelligent automation and AI and all of that kind of comes together. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to ruin the customer experience, regardless if internal or external customer experience. You want to make someone's day better. And that's why I think, and help the people to learn, not just the customer to learn, the employee to learn, the bot to learn. At the end of the day, we want to, I think when it comes to lean, we want to make things better for people. That's my personal feeling on how I feel with it.
Yeah, but that term you just used, intelligent automation, I mean, that to me is it's really brilliant, right? Because it's not, when, as you were saying before, people have a lot of concern about AI, about interactions with bots. Are they going to do the wrong thing? And is it discrimination built into them? There are all these questions about it. But if we kind of flip it around and say it's not out there, it shouldn't be out there on its own running rampant, right? It needs to be part of a system. It's a tool in a system, and you use it intelligent. It's not just that it's intelligent, we need to use it intelligently too.
Oh yeah, 100%. So and that's part of I think that's the other part too, when it comes to lean and transformations. We all know that part of that transformation comes change management, right? And also having the knowledge base out there. So it's not just like, here, go throw it out there and, we do these process improvements. If any one of us have been through a transformation, we had to learn how that new process works. The same thing still works here, regardless if it's a person or the bot, or but it's also teaching the humans how to interact with that and how to make the right decision, help make those right decisions. Another part that's a new term that some people in our world don't always understand, but people in technology understand, is you don't always need to be a developer to kind of use a technology. They're finding out there's these new term. I guess it's not relatively new. It might be new to our world. It's called citizen developers. So it's basically empowering the people. And that's what the other thing that I like about lean. and this turns us into developer, is empowering the people that actually do the processes so they become problem solvers, right? So they have the knowledge of how to problem solve. We teach them how to do that. But then there's some that can take it a step further. Say, okay, if I do X, Y, Z with this process, if I standardize it, why can't I automate it? And giving them the power to, maybe not everyone, but maybe certain people that get certified in it or have the knowledge of doing some type of automation. That kind of goes back to my days when I was telling you, when I was a systems engineer, where I had someone, he was developer. That's when I think about system development, that's someone like him, he's good with development, understands processes, and he was able to create a automation thing for me, like a very simple bot that did the work for me in the background, but I had to go trigger it. It wasn't like it was always right. I had to go trigger it, but it's something like that where it's going to be, I think as we start to move into the end of 2023 and into the future, and we're going to see a lot more organizations doing the development work themselves versus going strictly to IT. So that's the other thing I've always I do a lot of I do a lot of work with IT folks sometimes, but I'm trying to teach them with the problem solving that they even though people are getting laid off in the IT sector right now, they're strapped for resources, even though some other bigger companies are letting them go. So that's where you have to have that. I say this is where what's great about Lean Six Sigma and continuous improvement and working with IT in the business units is creating that partnership. So instead of competing against one another, why don't you just create a partnership and a working agreement? So like IT has all the standards for technology, but then let your folks who know how to do the problem solve and know that actually work with the processes make some of those simple changes themselves.
It's like, well, I'm thinking it's the kind of person who, there's always somebody in a group, or hopefully there's someone in a group who's like is really good with Excel macros, right?
Exactly. It's exactly the same thing. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly
so
it.
Not everybody knows how to do that, but you can go to Susie and Susie will write a macro for you.
Yes.
And so Susie could probably also learn to do some of this development as well. She doesn't have to be in IT to do it.
That's exactly it. And I think that's when it comes to learning and allowing people to do that, it just creates a really nice, I think that's where the lean transformation and lean culture on a continuous improvement culture comes into play, because instead of telling people what to do, we empower them to make those changes, or maybe raise their hand and say, hey, I don't know how to do this, but I think if we do this, then maybe, go talk to Susie. Or maybe you take it to IT and IT says, hey, you know what? There's someone in your business unit that may be able to help you today instead of waiting for 6 months for an IT resource. Because unfortunately, that's it's going to be more and more the norm.
Yeah, waiting for it to be created as a project in IT. And then you do have that issue that you always have. And which is once something is an IT project, then you've lost some of the knowledge of what the process is actually supposed to deliver. Right?
Exactly.
And so much of the work that happens in IT, especially if people are doing agile, is about trying to figure out what the customer wants and what actually helps the customer. So getting the customer closer, in this case, the customer being the internal customer, getting that internal customer closer to being able to actually deliver what would help the process. That's really cool. And I can see that's the kind of upskilling you're talking about, right? For some people, that's going to be, this would be just great. I get to make this thing that is useful.
And that's the other thing too, is when it comes to IT and business and operations and sales, we always try to start small, but at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is having where you create those partnerships is creating like a center of excellence when it comes to process improvements, right? And automation. I think those should all kind of be not one or the other. I think they should kind of be combined, because then that helps to create the standards that need to be done, because we just don't want anybody going out there and using whatever tools on the internet, because the issue of security comes into play as well. So that way, if you have a set of tools that you already know how to use, that your company's already using. I use AT&T for example, because I know just from the background of the AT&T, they have a center of excellence for automation. They also have a center of excellence when it comes to quality. And so those two kind of go hand in hand, where they say, you can use these tools to help problem solve whatever issues you might run into. Now, if it becomes too advanced, that's where they have like a knowledge base on the different automations. If this person wants to dabble it a little bit more, and they have learning sessions that they can attend. But then, of course, if they get stuck in something, then it does have to go to IT if it becomes too advanced. Sometimes it just needs, that's where IT comes in and steps in and helps with the automation.
You need that additional level of skill, or
Yeah,
perhaps a programming language that people, is something very specialized.
exactly.
Yeah. So, but it's so cool, Lauren, because no matter what we talk about with tools, we always come back to people, right?
Yes, exactly. It's always about the people. It's at the end of the day, it's always about the people. It's about bridging that gap between the people, processes, and technology, but at the core of it is always going to be people.
Yeah. And then these new tools then have the ability to learn some of the stuff that we've learned, or perhaps even learn some of the stuff that we're not aware of because we're not seeing things from where they're sitting, and maintain and develop that knowledge for us, so provide it back to us. And which is really exciting. I mean, it helps us be better.
I think it's so much more exciting. It's just when it comes into process discovery, right? It's yes, going and doing the traditional Gemba walks, we still have to do that. But on top of that, to maybe accelerate things a little bit, especially if the data and systems are there, is doing process mining. I think those two go really, really hand in hand. I'm sure some of the traditional Lean Six Sigma folks are probably cringe when I say that, but we still do Gemba walks. You still talk to people because the people are still at the core of all of this. But if we have the systems, we can kind of see what's going on behind the scenes in systems with process mining, which then gets us into doing the business process management, right? How do we continuously improve and use the tools that we have? It is always great to go to a whiteboard and, and map those processes out with people and understand what they do. But then it's also using the tools to kind of do stuff in the background to figure out how do we continuously improve those systems and continuously improve the people. Put those two knowledges together, I think it's just powerful. And
again, it's a way of making things easier, because when you are doing that traditional process mapping and you go to ask the question, well, how often does this happen, or what what percentage of the time is this completed perfectly? You get a kind of a finger in the wind answer a lot.
Yes,
but the tool probably has the answer somewhere in it. You just got to find it. Or if you can't find it, then you need to set the tool up so it can capture that data for you.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's interesting. I mean, we've come a long way, and it's still, we still have a lot of processes, and there's still a lot of systems and things that are manual that are maybe not connected. But I think it's an exciting time because we got so much going on right now. But it's exciting. It's an exciting time, especially if you like learning and liking to problem solve.
Well, we should all like learning, Lauren.
Yeah.
So, Lauren, I'd like to change the subject for a minute. I would like you to tell us about your lunches.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm actually getting ready to start this back up. It's probably going to take me, I've already done 100. I think I've done 105. I want to get to 200. It's probably going to take me a little bit longer to get to 200, just because things have picked up since 2020 for me. But yeah, I've been doing the lunches since 2020. I started them in the pandemic as a way to figure out, since we weren't able to network in person, how do we network virtually? And I forget who the woman, Aline, who got me started on it, because I was one of her lunches, and I was virtual. But it was a way of staying connected to the world, even though we couldn't be in the same room. I guess is the best way to put it. because as we all know, we learned a lot of lessons in 2020, and I figured out, you know what, I can still meet people even if I can't leave my house. So that's how it started. And when she and about the middle of 2021, I think. Yeah, it was the middle of 2021. It was after I had my first shots, my first round of shots. I feel a bit more comfortable meeting people. So went and had started having lunches in person in the Atlanta area.
That must have, what did that feel like the first time you actually sat down and actually ate lunch with somebody as opposed to
it was kind of
having a Zoom meeting with them?
It was different because when you're in a Zoom meeting, it's an hour, right? I usually schedule an hour, but I don't have to go. I don't have to, you know, you still get dressed. You still get dressed nice, but I didn't have to like go somewhere. So getting in the car, I realized it did take a little bit longer time. So it took a little. I had to takes a little bit more planning, but it was a lot more fun. I think meeting people in person is still relevant. I know a lot of people like to work from home, but I think a hybrid environment is more of, I like doing them virtually and in person. So
And so you've done 105 lunches with Lauren, and
Yeah.
you're aiming for 200. So who have you talked to? I mean, don't list all 105, but what kinds of people have you talked to?
I've talked to all kinds of people from all different places around the world. A lot of the people come from my network here in Atlanta just because I belong to Kettering, which is an executive network here. I'm now on the board, but I utilize that because we have like 360 active members, and then I forget how many we have non-active, we call alumni. But it's always a great way to meet people. And then through them, I start meeting other people. I think the farthest person away that was one of my lunches was I had three people in Australia.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was interesting because I had to. Those were more coffees than they were lunches.
It could only be lunch for one of you, right?
Right, exactly. But the people they come from all aspects. I want to say from all industries. I've talked with CEOs all the way down to people that are like the frontline people doing the work. I've talked to health coaches, talked to other consultants. From all over, I guess.
Wow. So do you have a couple of takeaways from doing that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so my couple of takeaways is always to keep your network open. Don't be afraid to go out there and meet someone new. And when you're networking, it's not about you. It's always about how you can help the other person, or just learning about their life, because you never know what someone's going to teach you. So just be open to learning. So I think that's the biggest thing is getting to know people, getting to learn, and then maybe understanding how you can help them instead of them helping you.
I love it. I think that was the way you stated that was just really, really beautiful. So yeah, so you're going to keep going at least to 200. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. It's at the end of the day, I wish I had done more networking when I was younger.
Yeah. I think I don't know about you, but when I look back on myself when I was younger, I probably held myself back from a lot of things.
Me too,
yeah. I don't know exactly what I was afraid of. But
you know what? That's a whole other topic on itself. But
that is, yeah.
I think I was told once, okay, this is going to be, I learned this from someone from a networking event, and so this person ended up becoming my mentor. She was never afraid to take a risk. And she's like, well, you're in continuous improvement. You're used to experimenting. I'm like, I'm used to experimenting inside of business. I wasn't used to experimenting outside of that. And I remember telling her that I had thought about going consulting on my own. And she was just give it a try. What do you have to lose? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I don't have much to lose. I'm going to learn something. So it's not like I'm losing anything. But then she made a point, and she made a point that a lot of times when women apply for jobs, they look for jobs that they know they would be safe in, that they would get. And so then they end up getting bored because they're not learning. So she said, whereas on the other side, men are more risk takers, and they always apply for jobs or go for things that are kind of, they may not have all the skills for, but they know they'll learn. So when she said that to me, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense why maybe when we were kids, we were taught to be like women sometimes are taught not to be risk takers and men are.
Yeah.
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 And so I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's so that's what I think held me back a lot as a kid is I didn't want to take the risk, and I always felt uncomfortable. So that's when you're uncomfortable is where you learn.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so these are all things that I think that even as we mature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it does sort of come back. Well, I don't know if I should do that, if I should apply for that, or if that's
Yeah.
should I go for this particular client? Yeah. So yeah. But as you said, all you're going to do is learn. So
Exactly. Maybe was it what is it? You have to what was that thing the Chinese thing or is it Japanese? I'm sorry, you fall down 7, get up 8 times.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Lauren, how do people find you?
You can find me through my website, Lauren at laurenhiseyconsulting.com. Or actually, you know, let's make this easy, laurenhisey.com. Type that in. That takes you right to my page. Or I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. That's a good place to get me as well.
That's great. And are you looking for people to have lunch with?
Yes, I am looking for more people to have lunch with. Yeah, in person or virtual.
So okay, so if you're listening to this, Lauren would like to have lunch with you. How's that for an invitation?
That's perfect.
Well, we'll see if anybody takes us up on that. But I would highly recommend having lunch with Lauren because you're going to learn something, and maybe she'll learn something from you. Like she said, you don't know what somebody's going to teach you. So, yeah. So Lauren, we've already talked a little bit about the days of our youth. What would be your one piece of advice for a young person starting out?
For my one piece of advice is to network and be open to learning. And if you have a chance to find a mentor, find one younger. Because they'll teach you some of they'll be there to answer your questions, and then they could help you learn and maybe accelerate a little bit faster.
Yeah, there's your human knowledge management right there.
There it is. Yeah.
But I mean, both in the knowledge, both in the networking and in having a mentor, right?
Yeah, definitely.
None of us are born knowing everything, and
no, not at all.
not at all. All right. Well, Lauren Hisey, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you today. And I wish you all the best with your next 95 lunches and with everything you're doing with intelligent automation.
Thank you so much, Bella. It was great to be here.
This is Bella Engelbach, and I'd like to thank Lauren Hisey for being my guest on The Edges of Lean. What did you learn from this conversation? What ideas did it spark? We would love to hear from you. Find Lauren at laurenhiseyconsulting.com or on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn or at leadforhumans.com or comment wherever you watch or listen. Subscribe and tell a friend about The Edges of Lean. Please join me in exploring more of The Edges of Lean. There's a lot to learn, and check out my friends in the Lean Communicators community at leancommunicators.com. You'll find more podcasts and videos with lots of great new content every week. The Edges of Lean is written and produced by Bella Engelbach with support from Podcast Inc. This is a Lean for Humans production.